Fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you. Glad you came too. Like your style when you know you got moves. You spit game and you know you spit.
Hello and welcome back to the Fastlane Collective. Hi, hello, we have missed you. It is just me and Daniella today. We do not have Brianna with us, but she will be back for the next Grand Prix. But before we get into the disaster of the Singapore Grand Prix, Daniella, how are you doing? How's life? How's things? Tell me all about it.
I won't lie, it feels like forever since I've done a podcast episode. Like, I genuinely can't remember the last one that I did, but it feels like forever ago. I have been really busy. I'm managing like 2 jobs at the minute, one motorsport related, one not motorsport related. So things have been like heating up. Classic me, my motorsport related job is to do with Formula E. Are we surprised? Absolutely not. This time, rather than working on the broadcast, I have been working on a documentary series that will be coming out later this year, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But yeah, not much else is really going on. I've just been working a lot every day. I work 7 days a week at the minute, so it's full on. But yes, how are you? How's your job going?
I'm doing okay. I just don't understand how you could do 7 days. That would break me. I need my nap. I need a rest. Like, I could not do that. So I mean, fair play to you.
Thank
and
you.
like
Yeah, I
Daniella
don't know
worked
how I'm
hard.
doing it. I had a 20-minute nap before filming this episode. That's the reality of it.
You are a tripper, like, really. I don't know how you do it. I mean, again, 2 jobs, balancing the podcast. I mean, F1, you might want to hire my girl because she will work hard for you. But yes, I'm doing okay. I've just got uni as well as like my other job as well. And yeah, I'm doing the podcast as usual. I kind of feel like it's been a while since I've been on the podcast, even though I was on the last episode. Sometimes it just feels longer than usual when we have like a 2-week gap. But we're back at Singapore, hot Singapore, and it's been a interesting race, McLaren. So we will get into all that in just a quick second, but there is just some news that I want to discuss, and it is about, well, McLaren-based news, as per usual. McLaren have dropped Alex Dunne from their junior programme, which is just heartbreaking for me as an Irish gal. So my question to you, Danielle, to kind of kickstart the podcast is dropping Dunne a sign McLaren is tightening its driver pipeline focus, or is this just a mutual see you later type of deal?
I wonder if it is a mutual deal, because I wonder if Alex has thought, it's not looking likely that I'm going to get a seat at McLaren anytime soon when they've got 2 drivers fighting for the Drivers' Championship. So I wonder if he's kind of thinking about the near future. Now, everyone's kind of been talking about, is he going to Red Bull? Like, what's going on? If he does go to Red Bull, it will be for next season of Formula 2. Because as it stands, Alex Dunne doesn't have enough super license points to become a Formula 1 driver. So therefore, he's going to have to do Formula 2 or another championship for another year to rack up those super license points. These points are extremely important to get an F1 seat. You need these, otherwise, there's so many requirements. You have to be 18 years old. You have to have enough super license points, and to get those super license points, you have to win championships at different categories. It's all a little bit convoluted in some ways. So I think when that news came out, everyone was like, oh my God, could he be the next Red Bull driver? No, because he doesn't have enough points. Helmut Marko has spoken up about the fact that they're having talks with Alex Dunne, and it makes me think like maybe this is more of one-sided in terms of Alex saying, right, look, I don't necessarily feel like my future is going to go in the right direction, because you've got 2 relatively young drivers who are at the top of their game. I'm just going to be sat on the side for eternity if I do that. Look at like the likes of Felipe Drugovich. He has been with Aston Martin for the last few years. He won F2, has been unsuccessful in getting a seat. It's been sat there waiting with Aston Martin when we all know that he's never going to get the opportunity because Fernando Alonso will keep coming back. And Lance Stroll is locked in for life thanks to his dad. So there is no opportunity for him to go there. And I think he's seen what's happened to Felipe and is like, I don't want that to be me. I think things have kind of like alarm bells are kind of ringing in Dragovic's mind, and that's made him go, okay, I'm not going to do this either. I'm going to go over to Formula 8. But Alex is going to want to give F1 a chance. And the only way he's going to do that is with another team. And he's kind of looking at the likes of Red Bull potentially, because in the last year, everything has shifted within that team. They're not sure what they're doing for next season. Could this be a way in for him? Could he do F2 with them next year? And then could he potentially, if things don't go well for Red Bull or V-Carb the following year, he's able to then take that step in and replace one of their drivers? That's kind of how I view his mentality right now, of like he needs other options. If I was him, I would be thinking there's no chance that I'm going to get to drive for McLaren in this vicinity right now. Now, I do have some thoughts on this later on that I'll cover in regards to Oscar, but I think if anyone was to kind of have a seat, like vacate a seat for him, I think it would be Oscar, but we'll come on to that a bit later on. So I think more so from Alex's side, but then again, McLaren are kind of like probably looking at their pool of drivers, I guess, and thinking about what do they want from their drivers. Now, Alex Dunne has, I would say, proven himself quite a lot this season in Formula 2. He was leading the championship for a while. He's had a couple of race wins. He now currently sits in 5th. He's, I think, 58 points behind the driver who's sitting at the top of the championship table. So maybe McLaren have gone, okay, he hasn't done quite enough as we had hoped. Now, I would disagree with that because I think that he has had a pretty strong season and was someone that I wasn't expecting to have such a strong season as he has so far. But at the end of the day, McLaren are a business and they need to look at things and they need to decide on who they want as part of their pool and where the future is within Formula One and within their development program as well. So I have a feeling it could be a little bit mutual, but maybe more one-sided from Dunne rather than McLaren.
Yeah, it's a tricky spot when you're a younger driver in the world of motorsport, especially when you're trying to make your way to Formula One, because again, there isn't that many seats, and we have drivers that stay in the sport for years upon years. Fernando Alonso. So it's tricky. I just really hope, Alex doesn't get kind of lost in the junior driver system and we lose another really talented person to be on the grid. And again, I'm a bit biased, I'm Irish, so I would love to see another Irish person up there doing well. I've backed Alex for a good while now, so yeah, I just really hope we see him with another team and another sporting series, and yeah, I'll continue to support him. But best of luck to Alex. And if you do end up going to Red Bull, I have my prayers are to you, because I always get so nervous when any driver gets, even like the junior program of Red Bull. I feel like sometimes they get so much talent they didn't know what to do with. So yeah, Alex, we're rooting for you, and we shall see what happens in his future. But moving on to Singapore, let's just start with Russell. George Russell won this weekend, and this is the 6th driver in 6 years. Basically what I'm trying to say is every year for the previous 6 races, we have had a different winner at Singapore, which is quite random, quite an odd statistic. And I think it proves how Singapore can be such a odd track. It's so unpredictable, and it's why I love coming here to Singapore, even though this race wasn't as eventful as it usually is. But Russell dominated from pole. He had a perfect start, perfect pace, and perfect strategy. Just a perfect weekend for Mercedes. Mercedes upgrades definitely delivered. They had better rear stability and downforce balance, which is crucial in Singapore's slow corners. And there are talks of Russell having his contract extended by the Austin GP. He quoted that it's got to be right and he doesn't want to rush things. So, my question to you, Daniela, was this Russell's most competitive drive this season?
I think it was like one of his. It's hard to say like competitive when he wasn't really challenged, because he was able to pretty much from the start go off and like that was it. Like he was gone and that no one could catch him. So it depends like on the definition of competitive, but it's hard, I think, to kind of put it in place when he was just that much quicker than the rest of the field. I would say more like dominant. I would say that was like his race to win. That was his like dominance being shown. But he's had some strong races this season, but I do think this is probably one of his standout performances just because he was so far ahead of the field. And I think that just shows, A, the upgrades that Mercedes have brought on, but B, also like actually how good of a driver George is. And I think people forget that sometimes. And then you just see these appearances from him where he's kind of like, don't forget about me, guys. Like, I am this good. You just don't see it that often. And when you do see it, it's always like so like expertly put together. And that's what I liked about this weekend, was that George did everything right. Now, yes, the strategy was in a good place, the car was in a good place, but his driving style was what got him that win. And pole as well. Like, he had an overall absolutely brilliant weekend, and I hope that, you know, this continues going forward. Obviously, as we've said, these upgrades have massively suited the Singapore track, so I can't say, like, looking to next year races that it's going to be like that for every race, but I think that he is someone that the McLaren boys and Verstappen should kind of be a little bit concerned around. This weekend, for me, I think has kind of like cemented my thoughts on George and how talented he is, because when he was back at Williams, people wasn't sure, because we couldn't really get a feel for him because he was driving a Williams that at the time was pretty much the worst car on the grid. And now he like went off to Mercedes, was second to Lewis. You got to see like some good performances from him, but the car wasn't great. And then this year, you've seen him have to take on that number one driver spot, kind of almost to an extent mentor Antonelli. And then you've just kind of seen, I would say the word I would use to describe George's year is like flourish. Like, I really feel like he's coming into his own, and we're seeing kind of the best out of George that I feel like we've been waiting to see for his whole F1 career. And I am hopeful that he will win more races towards the end of this year, but also hopefully going into 2026, obviously depending on cars and all of that fun jazz with the new regulations from next season. I now have completely forgotten what your question was. Yes, I just rambled on about George.
My question was, do you think that this was Russell's most competitive drive? To be honest, I should use the word complete drive, because I think he just had it from start to finish. It wasn't really competitive.
Yeah.
Complete was the word I was looking for.
Yeah, complete. Yeah, I would definitely say that being able to take pole and then win the race and be consistently so far ahead of the rest of the field cemented that. So the answer to your question is yes, that was a technically competitive but a complete drive from George Russell.
I think it's just he's really proved himself, George, and we spoke about this I think a couple podcasts ago. I can't remember what exact race we talked about this, but just how kind of underrated George Russell is. Because again, he was kind of a driver for me that went under the radar. Not that I didn't notice how great of a driver he was. He was just someone I never really put much focus on, especially when, you know, you're teammates with Lewis Hamilton for so long. You kind of get, you know, outshone by Lewis. But I think George is an incredible driver, and to kind of have that redemption arc of, you know, last year in Singapore, you know, been in it in like the last lap or a couple laps before the finish. I think this is just like a perfect like story to get some redemption at. But my next question for you would be, how long do you think Russell's next contract with Mercedes will be? And I know we're kind of coming into like next year where cars are going to be changing, the regulations are going to be changing. We're coming into like a whole new era of Formula One. But do you think Mercedes is going to keep George Russell for another couple of years, or like a good solid extension, shall I say?
My initial thought was they want that stability. They're going to continue on. But I do also think the 2026 regulations could change that a bit. But I do believe that George has done enough to prove himself to Mercedes that he is one of the best drivers on that grid. And I think that George gives them what they're looking for. I think that it depends who George is paired with. I don't know. I think they're going to go for a long one, I think. I'm not sure. My feelings is like I'm not sure about how they feel about Kimi right now. I think that's where I'm like, it's giving me uncertainty of like, are they wanting stability with George because they don't know what to do with Kimi? Or like, are they wanting... I'm trying to get in like Toto's headspace of like, what do I want from my team? And right now I don't know. But I think it's hard because we are at this like transitional page where we're then going to turn into the 2026 regulations, which is obviously going to change things massively for everyone. I'm going to stick with my gut. I'm going to say I feel like it's going to be a good few years, like more than 2. I don't know how many, but I think it's going to be, one of those ones. I think how it's going to come out as, it's going to say like multi-year contract, but no one knows what year it runs out on. That's what I think Mercedes are going to do. Do you agree, Yaz?
It's a bit of a like hard question to answer because we don't know, and I like asking these questions because I just love hearing what people think, to be honest. But I definitely think they'll have him for at least 2 years, and I'll be very shocked if it's just 1 year, because I think if he just gets a year extension, either George wants to move to another team or they're just really not sure of their future, which would be very surprising to me. But I could definitely feel a multi-year contract of God knows how many years. But they would be stupid not to extend his contract. I know George kind of talked about at Singapore how, you know, he doesn't want to rush things. He wants to make sure the contract is right. So they're definitely at least in negotiations. But do you not remember a couple of races ago that there was talks about Max Verstappen going to Mercedes? Like, do you think that is far too, like, these are just stupid rumors, or do you think that like Toto's kind of holding out and maybe Max might come to the dark side, might come to Mercedes?
Ooh. I actually forgot that happened. And like that was a rumor. No, I don't think Toto wants Max. I think he's happy with George. I don't think it would... I could not be the team principal of a team that has Max and George at the same team. That would be a disaster, because I don't feel like they would replace George. I think they'd replace Kimi if they were to do that. And I just think that's like an absolute recipe for disaster. So no, I think that Toto's happy with George. I don't know how he feels about Kimi, but I don't think he'll bring Max over to the dark side, as you referred to it.
This is no hate towards Mercedes. I would find it hilarious if Max did end up going to Mercedes, just that like rival battle that they've had for so long. But it would be interesting to me. But I don't think either that Max will go to Mercedes. I don't think Toto would really want the headache of that either, to be honest. I think he respects Max as a driver, but I think having Max Verstappen on your team, you know, you gotta be strong-willed for that. That man will tell you what he thinks of your car and your team rules. But anyway, moving on. Speaking of team rules, let's talk about McLaren, Daniella. And I don't know if I want to talk about this one, to be honest. So let's just talk about it. So McLaren, you know, clinched their 10th constructors title. Congratulations, McLaren. Well done. You deserve it. The McLaren have been on top this season. But I have to say, when they were celebrating their constructors win, you just had Oscar Piastri. He was still in the media pen, kind of just processing the race that he had. I thought it was so sad seeing him, look at the screen and see his team celebrate without him. It was so sad. But he had that first lap contact with Norris in lap 1, but both continued. But the mood was definitely soured throughout that race. The team radio from Oscar Piastri is what shocked me the most, because this man has been chill, cool, calm, and collected. He was not happy. He was not happy at all. My first question, and I feel like I'm going to have a billion questions for you, Daniela, when it comes to this McLaren drama, is how bad do you think the rift is between the McLaren team? Do you think they can still operate as a unit even through the Drivers' Championship? And, we're at like 22 points now. We're getting thinner and thinner when it comes to like who's going to win.
Oh, I hate this question. I was going to bring this point up. Like, I had already written in my notes, Oscar Piastri team radio, because I just was like, as you said, this is not like Oscar at all. He's always so level-headed, and now we saw a different side to him that we haven't really seen at all in his whole F1 career, and I would say even his junior career as well. There is tension at that team, for sure. And I think McLaren were trying to keep it under the surface once they clinched that Constructors Championship. That lid is about to burst. And next race, there will be no lid. Because the gloves are off. McLaren have gone, okay, you got us what we wanted. You do what you like. I'm going to say something controversial that people are not going to like. I do think that McLaren would prefer if Norris won the Drivers' Championship. And I think whether they know it or not, they might have a slight bias and they haven't realised it. They seem to be favouring Lando more than Oscar. If we look back at the whole Monza situation, I think it was clear that Lando was favoured there. Now, I understand that this time around they're not then going to do it again because everyone was like, why did you do that for? And they need to draw lines somewhere. They need to be like, okay, we can't keep doing this at every race. We're just going to have to let this go. So poor Oscar then kind of gets dealt the bad hand again. And Oscar's not had great races the last 2 rounds. And that makes me concerned that his mentality has switched a little bit. Now, something that I've noticed since watching multiple different motorsport championships over the last few years is that there gets to a point in the season, not right at the end of the season, but when you're kind of in that third quarter of the season, the driver who is leading the championship he makes a few mistakes. Things start to kind of get to him. I've seen it a couple times in Formula E, now Formula 1 as well. I think that the drivers kind of go, oh, no, I don't know what's going on, and this all feels like a lot. Whether they fully recognise that within their thoughts and feelings, who knows? But I think that this is what is happening to Oscar. Now, if you told me this at the start of the season, I wouldn't have believed you because I thought Oscar has it in the bag because he is. His mentality is so, like, ice. He's just so... I can't think of another word other than, like, calm. Like, he just knows what he wants. He sets out to get it, but he's not overly emotional. Like, that's just not Oscar. But now that he's had, like, a race where, like, things aren't looking so hot, that he's then gone, oh my God, what's going on? This is not what I want. I'm losing that championship. I do think he can pull it back, but McLaren need to let these drivers go racing. We can't have this, like, we can kind of fight, but not really because McLaren rules and all of this stuff. McLaren don't care anymore. They've got what they wanted. That's the Constructors Championship. And in the words of David Coulthard, that's for the team. That's for everyone back at base. That's for the engineers. That's for everyone on site. That's for everyone apart from the drivers. Because if a driver wins a team's championship within Formula 1, but they never win a driver's championship, they will never say that they're a world champion, right? They'll only say they're a world champion if they've won the drivers. So they have done what's needed to get McLaren what they want. I think McLaren are now going to go, here you go, you can do what you like, because we got our end of the deal. It's up to you two what happens. As you said, we're getting a lot closer to the championship decider weekend, because we're now, I think, 6 rounds left? But also, that gap is shrinking. There's now, I believe, 22 points between Lando and Oscar. That means that things could change if one driver wins a race and the other driver... So if Lando wins and Oscar doesn't score any points, Lando's ahead in the championship. That is how close we are now, which is terrifying to think about. And I have a feeling that we're going to see more collisions between the two of them. And that Max and George are probably going to capitalise on that. If Lando and Oscar continue to heighten these emotions, which I think is going to happen because they're both so eager to win the championship, understandably so, that I think they need to be careful that they don't end each other's races and then Max ends up winning the Drivers' Championship, because they're going to make mistakes. Max isn't. Max knows what he's doing. He's already won multiple championships. He knows what it takes to win a championship. Those two don't. And that's where they need to be worried. Now, I feel like, again, I've completely missed the point of your question, and I don't think I answered it. And I've forgotten what it is because I've gone on an absolute tangent. But I do think that McLaren are ready to let I can't think of a better term, but let shit hit the fan and have these drivers have a go at it. And it's going to be an interesting way to end the season. And I'm very excited.
I mean, Max only needs 63 points to catch Oscar. And I know that's still a big number. I'm not saying he's going to do it, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible. And that's when McLaren should be going, oh, we need to just let them race. Because these team orders, I have to be honest, I don't think they're that fair. I think it started off being fair, and there's moments that it definitely was level playing field. But when, Lando has a slow stop and then we're swapping the cars around because Lando had a slow stop, we're trying to push these factors in and change the result. I mean, that's something that the team couldn't control, a slow stop. So we shouldn't have had to, get Oscar to, swap places. And I mean, I think this is just going to keep happening, unfortunately. And I hate to say it, but I do think there is a bit of a bias towards Lando. And this is no hate towards Lando, because I think he's an excellent driver. He's been with McLaren when, McLaren were nowhere on pace, nowhere on the grid, right back at the bottom. But this seems to be a common thing, that they seem to, favour Lando. It happened with Daniel Ricciardo a couple times as well when he was in the team. And this is you go on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, you will see the comments, and everything McLaren is just how could you do this to Oscar? How could you do this to Oscar? And to not even include him in the celebrations, and I think this incident, you can say that, it was a racing incident, which I kind of agree with. I do think it was a racing incident, but I think it has just tipped Oscar over the edge. I think he's enough is enough. I've bent over backwards for you, and yous aren't doing the same for me. Which is, I don't blame the man. I don't blame the man. This is his first, chance at getting the championship. Same with Lando, but it's got to be fair. You've just got to let them race. That's how Formula One is. There shouldn't be team orders sometimes. I think they just need to let them race, and what happens, happens. Breathe. I've just been so angry about this for the last couple of days. But what was my next question? I'm just so riled up. I can't even see my notes right now. But while Oscar was still in the media pit, do you think that it was unfair for even I don't even know if you saw on the Instagram page of McLaren, for like 10 photos, it was just the team without Oscar. It was all just Lando, Lando, Lando. Like, that is so unfair. That's so, like, mean.
They sit there and say they're playing it fair.
They're
This
just
does not speak playing it fair.
And
Lando
it's-
is that golden child, and nothing is ever going to change for them. Even when they have a driver who could, and I'm hoping, going to win, and I know I'm biased here, going to win the Drivers' Championship, that isn't Lando Norris, they're still favouring Lando. And that it just shows the mentality that McLaren have, which is kind of why I'm glad that Alex Dunne has gone. And the reason I mentioned this earlier on, I touched on it and said I was going to come back to it. Now this is why I'm coming back to it. I said something along the lines of, like, if anyone was to give up their seat or vacate their seat and Alex Dunne was to come in at McLaren, it would be Oscar. And I think that's because Oscar is starting to see the cracks. He is realising that no matter how hard he tries, no matter what he does, he's never going to be good enough for McLaren because he's not Lando Norris. Even if he outperforms Lando Norris, even if he wins Drivers' Championship, no matter what, he is not Lando Norris, and therefore is going to reach a point where there's not much more he can give. Which is why I was kind of like, okay, that's when someone like Alex Dunne could come in. Now, I'm not going to say that at the end of the season that Oscar Piastri is going to leave McLaren. I don't think that's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if this time next year we're having this conversation again and things look a bit different and Oscar's going somewhere else. Because I still believe that nothing will change because he isn't Lando Norris. And maybe that's a really unfair comment from me. I want to know, Yaz, if you're kind of thinking in the same vein here, or if you think what I've just said is the most, like, outlandish, like, slander against McLaren. Now, to premise, I am a McLaren fan. I just don't like the way that they are treating Oscar. They did the same thing with Daniel Ricciardo. Now, maybe it's because these are my favourite drivers and I'm just a little bit overprotective. But I think it is unfair that they say they have all of these rules. They're playing it fair. They make Lando and Oscar switch. But it always seems to be when it's in favour of Lando. But when it comes to being in favour of Oscar, it's like, oh, no. We can't do that because we're playing it fair. But now it's not fair. And I know they have to draw a line somewhere, but it always feels like they draw the line when it comes to Oscar. And that's why it doesn't feel fair. I know that winning a Drivers' Championship is on that driver, but you also need the team to back you up and do their end of the deal. Oscar's done his end of the deal by helping them win the Constructors Championship. That's been and gone and done now. Heading into these final 6 rounds, things need to change. And that is McLaren stepping back and being like, okay, you guys fight it out. We're just gonna, no team orders, nothing. You guys do what you want to do. We've won it. We want to help you guys, but we can't keep meddling in it. But they also need to think about the fact that they have kind of, I would say, pushed Oscar out a little bit. Would you agree? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you with that. And I think Oscar saying, this is not fair on the radio and being very vocal. Again, we're not used to that with Oscar. I think gloves are off now, and I don't think it matters even if team orders came into place and Oscar was told, okay, let Lando pass. I do not think that man will let Lando pass. He'd be like, hell no. Like, I think McLaren, they've got to watch out. They've got to watch out for Oscar because, I mean, that man is pissed off and rightly so. Winning a championship doesn't come around as often as people think. Next year, the cars change. McLaren could have no pace. McLaren could not be in the grasp of winning a championship. And I hope not, because McLaren, they deserve it. They've been the underdog for a good while, and now that they're back on top, I'm enjoying watching them race. But I think they've got to stop this, everything has to be fair, because they're bending the rules at certain spots for what seems to be Lando, and that's not fair. I wouldn't be as annoyed with McLaren if they didn't try and act like, oh, we do everything by the book, everything's really fair. And I think it's why they're under so much criticism at the minute. It's why people are so annoyed at what's happened to Oscar. If they just said, fight it out and this happened, then I think, they wouldn't have as much criticism. But it is what it is. And I mean, Oscar Piastri has Mark Webber as his manager. Mark Webber knows what it's like to be, not favoured by a team. So I think, Mark Webber's going to be like, you need to get your arms out, get the elbows out, and give it to the next race. And I do think we're going to see some really hard racing, which is probably going to lead to some collisions, which I hope doesn't happen. Well, it'll be entertaining for us to watch, but I don't think my heart could handle it going to the last race with like a couple points between them both. I don't know if I could do it. But my next question for you, Danielle, is should McLaren have managed the incident a bit more, or should they have just let it slide? What do you think?
I'm in two minds about it because I think they needed to kind of step back and say, look, you guys do what you want because this is getting ridiculous. But also at the same time, like, when we look at Monza, that favoured Lando, so this one could have, if they had handled it better, could have favoured Oscar. But at the same time, I'm like, I just want them to race. Like, this is what motorsport is. Like, let's just leave it at that. Like, let's stop getting involved. I know that McLaren wanted to win the Constructors, and at that point they think they knew they already had it in the bag, which is why they didn't get involved. So it just makes their motive just feel like, well, we got our end of the deal, so now we don't really care. And it's like, really? Like, everything else that's happened, and it's like, okay, you can do what you like because we got what we wanted, so it's all fine now. That's not really how it works, McLaren, because you have, like, jeopardized one of your drivers multiple times. So, two minds here. I think if it was earlier on in the season, or like even a few races before them winning the Constructors, I'd have been like, okay, like they need to draw a line somewhere, let's like move past it. But I think it's just like the fact that they knew they had pretty much got the Constructors in the bag, that it was kind of like, well, now you guys can do what you like.
Yeah, I mean, you're celebrating with like Oscar when, the main bulk of your points to go towards winning the Constructors is from that man that you've left out, not celebrating with on the podium. It's difficult. I understand they want to play it fair. They want to give them both, the opportunity to win. But sometimes you just gotta step in as a team and either be fair or be unfair. And that's, to be honest, how Max Verstappen has won so many championships, because the team was able to be like, go racing or make those hard strategy calls. So, is there anything else you want to talk about with McLaren before we move on? Get it out of our system.
I think I've got everything out of my system.
Yeah, I think I have too. I think I have. There'll probably be something like down the line, like, they did this as well. But I think it's best we just move on. And I think we should move on to a team that didn't really have the best of qualifying, because they didn't have qualifying for them this race. And I'm talking about Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon at Williams. They were both disqualified from qualifying for rear wing flex infringements. Say that 3 times fast. Their technical issues was the rear wings failed deflection tests, exceeding FIA flex limits. So they were both out of qualifying and didn't even get to qualify. I mean, poor them, after you had Carlos Sainz winning on the podium a couple of races ago. Well, last race. So my take on this is, should the FIA tighten or clarify flex wing regulations? Because this seems to be a common thing that we keep having throughout this season about like rear wing just mishaps.
Yes, I feel like that is such a great area when it comes to the flexi, is it called flexi rod of the rear wing? Like, I feel like it is a topic of conversation that has been going on for the last few seasons, because I know that McLaren had theirs, and then people were bringing it up, being like, can we have that? Can we not? Like, can they be disqualified for that? All this stuff. And I feel like it's still unclear. Like, sometimes the FIA kind of start to speak out on it, and then you think you understand the rules, but then in reality you don't. And now I'm just sat here like, I still don't know what the rules are. Like, I'm still so confused. I would rather they kind of just said, look, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. Now, obviously, the teams are going to play into it, find loopholes, do what they can, and there's still going to be grey areas because that's just how it works. But I feel like this is such a problem that we continuously come back to that it does need to be looked at. But then again, I think I say that about every single thing that the FIA brings up, and I'm like, we need to look at this, we need to look at that. That's not right. This isn't right. Like I say that every single week. But I'm guessing as you've asked me this question that you're kind of thinking in the similar vein that like we still don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's really odd as well that it wasn't just Carlos or Alex. You know, both of them, they both had like this issue with their wing. And I'm the same as you. Like every other race or like a couple of times throughout the season, we have at least one team being disqualified or getting a penalty or something due to a wing. Again, I'm not a technical genius. I don't know too much about wings, but like surely there's a way that we can definitely like tighten up this, I don't know, mishap that keeps happening. It's just really frustrating for the drivers and the fans. Like I want to see them qualify, and I think that Williams could have had a really good result this race. I just think it's so unfortunate because out of the drivers' hands as well. But yeah, technical talk, quite an odd situation that keep coming up. But yes, the FIA I think should crack down on this just a little bit more, because I want to see my drivers race and qualify. Okay, so you may. But moving on, let's talk about Verstappen. His frustration, to put it lightly, across this race. I mean, Verstappen really did have some struggles. And you would not have thought when he finished P2. So Verstappen was struggled with car balance and downshift instability all weekend. His downshifting seems to be an issue we've had throughout this entire season, as well as last season. And it just seems to keep getting worse. I mean, he radio messaged saying, the rear snapping everywhere, I can't trust these downshifts. And we even saw a couple times him locking up and almost losing the car completely. Red Bull looked strong in sectors but inconsistent in braking zones. Max salvaged P2 but admitted post-race, we were never comfortable, the car fought me the whole way. So, is Red Bull losing its edge in high deg and high temp conditions?
Possibly. I think that it's interesting that we keep coming back to the same problem that Max is struggling with, and that Red Bull have not kind of figured out a way to rectify this. As you said, this was happening last season and this season. And I think that played massively into why he couldn't catch Russell. I think if the car was balanced in the way that Max was happy with, he would have hunted Russell down and, you know, it would have been a fight for first. He just didn't have the car that he needed to do so. And this is just a continuous problem. And I wouldn't have been too mad if Max won, because this is the one race that Max hasn't won. Out of every race that's on the calendar, of this year's calendar, to clarify, this is the only race that he hasn't won. And I think that even though in interviews he was like, if I don't win this, like, no one's ever going to be like, oh, Max didn't win Singapore, or like, they'll be like, oh, Max is world champion, like all of this stuff. So like, I get where he's coming from, but I do think deep down, like, you're going to be kind of frustrated if there's one track that you haven't nailed. And so I think that comes with it, where like he was in like touching distance, starting second, thinking, okay, like I could probably, because I was trying to second guess their strategy. Sorry, I've just gone on an absolute tangent again. I was trying to guess Red Bull's strategy. Now, for context, I was at work, so I couldn't actually watch the race, but we did have the live timing up. And we were trying to second guess, like, what's Red Bull's strategy? Now, Max started on the softs, so in my mind, I was like, okay, that is because they want Max to get George on the start, go full steam ahead, make a big gap, and then he'll pit, and then hopefully either be within the top three or stay ahead. That was what my thinking was. Max didn't do that because he didn't get George at the start, and and none of that happened. Now, maybe I've completely like got Shashi wrong. I'm not a Shashist. It is something that I'm still trying to get my head around all these years later into my love and passion for Formula One. So I think that the car played into that a little bit. As you said, Yaz, like we would see moments where like he would kind of lose it a little bit, and he was actively fighting against his own car, which is not ideal when you want to be winning races, and kind of knowing that your biggest rivals over at McLaren are colliding into each other and having their own dramas. You want to capitalize on that. You want to bring down that gap in that championship and be able to still be in contention for this title. So it's something that I think Red Bull need to have a look at, and I think that maybe the temperatures did play into that. You know, like Singapore is one of the hottest tracks that we have. I think you've already said at the start of this that this is like the first track this year that's kind of gone into that like high alert of temperatures. Drivers are having to wear cooling vests, all of this fun stuff, and maybe their car doesn't suit that. And maybe that is why Max has never won in Singapore, because he can't quite handle him, or the car can't quite handle the heat out there. I don't know. I think there are many factors into it. But I do think that that downshift is causing a big problem.
I mean, like Red Bull and Max's car specifically have had so many issues throughout the season and last season, but Max is still catching the McLarens. Do you think the McLarens should be a bit worried? I mean, 63 points. He's 63 points behind Oscar. He is a championship leader still. Do you think there's a possibility that he's going to catch Oscar and win? Because wouldn't that just be like the most hilarious thing as a Max fan? Like if you were a Red Bull fan and Max Verstappen managed to win when the McLarens were ahead. I mean, I'm sorry, McLaren fans. I think it would be kind of funny.
Yeah. Never say never, but I think that what he's going to need really is to win 3 races and have both McLarens not score any points. Now, with kind of getting their elbows out and the gloves coming off, that kind of looks like it could be a possibility. I think that, you know, as we've already talked about a lot, those 2 McLarens are going to be fighting each other, and they're not going to make it easy. We want Lando to we've been kind of saying for a while, like, Lando doesn't feel like he wants to win this championship because he's not making those big moves. Well, this weekend he gave it a go. And so I feel like that is what he's going to do. Heading in towards the end of the season, he is going to be trying to make more of those big moves. He's going to look for gaps that maybe don't exist or are just about that. And I think that this could be a big drama between the 2 of them. And if I was Max Verstappen, I would be thinking about that and being like, okay, I need to watch out because this could be my time. So I think I don't want to say it's like not a possibility, because I think it is. I just don't think it's that realistic. But if it happens, that would be a very interesting story.
Listen, this is how Kimi Räikkönen won one of his championships. It was
Yes, that's so true.
2007, I think. That could be wrong. 2007, yeah. I mean, it happens. It happens. And the history could be repeating itself again. And I'm pretty sure he won that over the McLarens. I could be wrong. It was, yeah.
No, you are correct, yeah.
Yay, I'm right with my facts. So yeah, again, history could be repeating itself, and McLaren can lose out on that world championship. But we don't know. Listen, I love the drama, more excitement into the championship, because to be honest, it's been a bit stale, the championship so far, when it comes to like battles and getting closer and closer points wise, but we shall see. Moving on, let's talk about Hamilton and Alonso. Hamilton suffered front left brake failure in the final laps. Very random, just kind of came out of nowhere. He repeatedly breached track limits, earning a 5-second penalty post-race penalty. Alonso was furious over the radio, calling it unsafe and that Hamilton should have not been allowed to continue the drive. Ferrari boss Fred Vasseur defended Hamilton, saying that he slowed down and the car remained under control. Was it fair to let Hamilton finish, or do you think as soon as his brake went that he should have been told to pit or stop the car?
I saw some clips of this on Instagram where like it kind of looked like Lewis wasn't in control, like he was cutting curbs, like it felt like he needed to slow down when he was getting to a corner and couldn't, so he was just having to cut the corner to kind of stay in control. So I guess to an extent he was in control, but not really and not in a safe way. I can see where Alonso's coming from, but I also think that Alonso is just so frustrated. He has had enough. He wants to like erase this whole season and come back in 2026 and see what happens. Like he is so done with this. And I don't fully blame him either. Like it's not been his year at all. Like we like look back at 2023, start 2023 when Alonso was doing really well, like getting podiums, and now like it took him so many races to get his first points like of the season that it just, yeah, I think that he's just had enough. And like he's kind of like, why is he not being like reprimanded for this? Like why can he still do that but then like I do stuff and like this happened? Like I think he's just in a bit of a negative like mindset right now that that kind of was just like adding salt into a wound, and he's like just so done. Like why isn't he being like in trouble for this? Why is he allowed to be driving like this? Rather than it coming from a place of concern of like his safety. Now that might be a little bit rude of me to say, but I just think that Fernando's just he cannot be bothered anymore. He doesn't want to do this anymore.
I mean, if I was racing for like what, 40 years or however long Fernando's been racing for, like I swear that man is as old as the sport is. I think I would have less patience. I mean, he even threatened to disconnect his radio like throughout the race. This man just does not care sometimes, and it's like, listen, I've had enough. This car's crap. So yeah, I get it, but because of that 5-second post-race penalty, Alonso did move up to 7th place, so at least he got few extra points here and there. But my next question is, should the FIA be stricter when a car has a critical issue, especially a brake issue? Because I think we've seen it time and time again from the FIA. They kind of take a minute to, make a decision. And when we have a critical issue with a car, again, like a brake, do you think it should have been a lot quicker?
Yeah, I say it's time and time again, as you've used the words time and time again. So it's a common thing here with the FIA. But I think brake failure is quite an important thing to have a look at. It's concerning, and I think that Lewis should have been black and white flagged and come in. Is that the right flag?
Yeah.
Black and white? Yeah, okay. And then suddenly just went black and white flag and then picked the checker flag, and I was like, that's not what I meant. But you knew what I meant. Okay. Yeah, I just think that it's just it's unsafe, and he could be a danger to himself and to others. So I think that the FIA do need to make quicker decisions on these things rather than leaving it to post-race. Like, what if Lewis had hurt himself? Like, what if he'd crashed? Like, we need to come up with these quicker and going, okay, this is unsafe. Like that's why we have the FIA, right? We need to make sure that people are not in unsafe situations. Being a Formula 1 driver, you're permanently in unsafe situations. You're driving really fast. The risk is very high. But we kind of like we reduce the risks by having in safety precautions. Sounds like I'm giving off a risk assessment here, but like, hear me out. And some of the ways that we kind of like risk assess and kind of allow this sport to continue is by having these rules and regulations that say, like, okay, if this crucial part of your car breaks, you're going to have to come in because you're putting yourself at risk and other drivers. For example, your brake's not working. If you can't stop your car, then that is not safe. And I love this sport so much, and I'm so grateful that we now have more measures in place like the halo and all these other safety precautions that have been put into place in recent years to prevent harm, injury, death, etc. But there still can be a bit more done because the last thing I want to see is a horrific crash on screen and potentially a life loss. I'm not saying that was what was going to happen, because it clearly didn't, but there are times like when you know that things are kind of going to be okay, and I feel like there are going to be times it's going to be a bit more lenient, because like something might happen, but it's actually not that big of a risk. Where this felt like it was a big risk. Like the videos that I saw of Lewis, like he genuinely was not. He couldn't even go straight. Like he was just going here, there, and everywhere, because he was going so fast that he couldn't slow down, especially when going into these corners. And like I said, was cutting the corners. So I think the FIA needed to be quicker. But then I say that all the time, because one of my biggest pet peeves is when the FIA make a decision 15 hours, this is an exaggeration, but 15 hours after the race, like, after the race, like, I'm like, make that happen whilst the race is still going. It's so infuriating when the FIA make a decision that, and it gets announced after the race, especially if it's hours later. It's happened multiple times in Formula 1, happens in Formula E too, and it's frustrating for broadcasters as well, because then we put out the wrong information, because it usually changes after what we've put out goes on there. It just ruins it for the fans as well, and for the driver. It ruins it for everyone when the FIA make really late decisions. That's what I'm trying to say here. That was a very long-winded way of saying it. There we go.
No, you're 100% right. And I'm with you on that one. I think we need to make these decisions quicker, especially how crucial that was. And also, like, his brake was sparking. We could clearly see it wasn't working. But what do we know? We're not the FIA, and we are stupid. And and we don't know what their regulations are and how they like make these decisions. I get that they want to make the right decision and don't want to have to take back a decision, but I thought that was pretty clear. I mean, you could tell Hamilton didn't really have control of the car, even though Fred Vasseur says he did. But hey, it was towards the end of the race, which was like the only good thing about him having this brake issue, because the race was like gonna end very soon, but still quite concerning. So kind of like the last thing I wanted to talk about was that this is the first heat hazard we have had at a track before. This is the FIA's first official heat hazard race. Cockpit temperatures were over 60 degrees. Hydration and stamina became race deciding. There was no retirements despite the heat, which is a testament to these drivers. I mean, I can hardly handle like a heat wave here in Ireland.
Yeah.
Like that's I'm too warm.
Was it last year when the drivers, it might have been a few years ago now, I can't remember, like the drivers were really struggling with the heat. Like George Russell looked so unwell after the race. I think Lance Stroll, I think, was like sick in his helmet. It could have been Ocon, I can't remember now. Like someone was unwell during the race. I can't remember what year it was, but like that proved that we needed like measures put into place. I'm glad that the FIA have realised that this is something that needed changing, and have like put out like these weather like heat hazards, brought in the cooling vests, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's we're in Singapore. It's so humid as well. But do you think that the FIA should implement a max heat threshold, or like a mandatory kind of cooling tech? I know that we have the cooling vests and stuff like that, but is that enough? Or should it get to like a point where if it reaches this temperature, we have to call off the race for the safety of the drivers?
Potentially, because like like with the wet weather race, so I'm going to talk on Spa 2021 here, but like that ended up getting completely cancelled. They did a few laps under safety car because it was just too wet to race, and I feel like the heat is also like another problem. As I've just said, like drivers were unwell during the race a few years ago, that like things maybe do need to be done. But then this year I feel like they all managed it a bit better, and I don't know if it's because of those cooling vests or like what changed really, but it's scary when you say like the cockpit is like 60 degrees. That's insane. I couldn't imagine being in that temperature and then driving. I couldn't be in that temperature like full stop, let alone having to actually do something and like risk your life doing something. So maybe there needs to be something that is looked at, but hats off to these drivers being able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, Lando was even reminded throughout his race to drink more water, like use your drink stuff, because it's just the heat. And I mean, just like those drivers, round of applause for me, because I could not do that at all. And it's just so worrying to be like 60 degrees in a cockpit. No, thank you. And you're in such tight conditions as well, on top of that helmet. Incredible stuff. But I think that's everything of this weekend. Daniela, is there anything else you want to sign us off with before I wrap up?
Yes, I forgot something during the McLaren segment, and
Oh,
and then you reminded me because you said Fernando Alonso almost disconnected his team radio. Oscar Piastri apparently did disconnect his steering wheel, which obviously then like disconnects the team radio, as Zach was like congratulating them on winning the constructors. And I was like, I don't think Oscar did it on purpose, but I think that it was kind of funny with like everything, like in the context of everything else, for that to happen. Yeah, kind of funny.
I mean, fair enough. When you've had that team against you for a good couple of races, I think I would disconnect my radio as well. Yeah, I don't blame you, Oscar. I don't blame you. So that is all that we have this week at the Fastlane Collective. Thank you so much for listening, spending some time with us, talking all things Singapore Grand Prix. Give us a like, a review. Yeah, let us know if you're enjoying our stuff. And we will see you in the Fastlane. Bye-bye.
Hello, fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you, glad you came too.